Hey there, my friends. How are you? It's good to see you and be here with you. My name is Liz, if it's our first time meeting, and I am the owner and founder of We Heal for All, a place and space to commune and connect about the many different changes that are going on in our world, and to do the brave and profound act of collectively healing both at a personal, individual level, the way that these collectively shared wounds manifest and imprint themselves, or that we can feel within ourselves, as well as coming together in community to do the really beautiful, heartfelt work of healing collective wounds together, of holding space for collective wounds together and giving birth to new ways of being by digesting, processing, and integrating these wounds and seeing what comes through on the other side. One of the primary ways that I do this is through healing circles. And actually, even calling them healing circles, I feel like limits them in some kind of way. So, forever playing with the exact language around it. But it's really circle space to do what I was just describing there, to come together in community with both like-minded and like-hearted individuals, as well as people who hold differing, diverse views, people who are tapped into different threads within this larger fabric of the world that we're in. And by doing so, when we come together, we share about our personal unique experiences with world change, with global topics, with cultural issues. We talk about um, feelings that are challenged, right? We talk about anxiety, about sadness, about disbelief, and we also talk about revelations, about new insights, about um, what's emerging within us through the tension, through the muck that we are experiencing or seeing or witnessing. So, in this way, circle space is a very, again, so many words to describe it, but it's really a place of, of where transformation can come through, where the transmutation of um, stuck or challenging emotions um, can be seen, can be witnessed, can be named, can be validated, and therefore can serve as fuel or fruit for new things to come through, new ideas, new ways of being. But as you can probably guess already, to do that, to come together in community with other people and speak openly, it's like no easy feat at all. You know, it takes a lot of courage and bravery to be willing to share yourself with other people in general, but especially other people that you may not know. And then another layer on top of that is the fact that we are talking about issues like the climate crisis and climate injustice. We're talking about issues of racial discord, racial injustice. We're talking about the current state of our country within the United States. I'm in the United States right now, if you can't tell. um, but we're talking about this current state that our country's in, the political divisiveness, the confluence of media and technology and collective narratives. Like, we're talking about really messy, big things, right? And we're talking about things where a lot of times the majority of places, and I'm thinking about Twitter, I'm thinking about where like the public square is these days, um, lack or are not very conducive for really openly sharing, It tends to be more of a battle zone, tends to be more of a place where we have to debate each other. And, debating is very, very necessary. It's very, very necessary. The proliferation of new ideas and the presentation of ideas and refining those ideas, debating those ideas, that is really necessary and important, an important process to exist, an important thing that needs to exist in the world. And I'm also of the belief that we need space and time that allows us to share openly about whether it be our views, which our views, for the majority of us, are tied to our morals, they're tied to our principles, they're tied to our spirituality, our religion, they're tied to our own hopes and fears and desires and values, which are all tied to our emotions or are all informed by our emotions and our feelings. So, in a day and age when the majority of opportunities to engage with these big ass topics is in the form of this kind of like this headier form of debating each other, intellectualizing these topics, as well as in the form of taking action and strategizing and thinking about nonprofit work, activism work, development work, all that good stuff. The question that I hold is, where is the space for us to come together and care for the emotional dimensions of being engaged with these topics? Cue the circles. No, but you see this popping up more and more. Maybe you see it in the circles that you run in, meaning like the different communities that you're part of, the organizations that you're part of, the activist spaces that you're part of. Um, more and more these opportunities to process uh, our experiences and our emotions and process at an emotional level are becoming more and more popular. The pandemic in particular really made this need more known. Um, and just because of the amount of upheaval and uncertainty going on for all of us, right? And so having place and space for us to come together and to process what's going on is really, really helpful. So what I found to be particularly helpful in this, and there's many different ways to go about uh, setting up space where community-based emotional processing, community-based mental health needs can be met. And the way that I go about doing it in Circle is by using meditation or just an opportunity to really connect with oneself, go into an observation and internal awareness exercise that supports one to connect with themselves before connecting with other people. So kind of like, setting up ground zero before going in and sharing and connecting with each other. So I use meditation, and then I use storytelling. And really, when I say storytelling, I mean really more just speaking about your own personal lived experience with the topic at hand. And really coming from a very systemic perspective on these topics, knowing that all these topics are highly interconnected to many, many other topics, many, many other aspects of our system: economic, social, political, cultural, global, environmental, spiritual, interdimensional, universal, that it's really very much all welcome. It's all welcome here. So we spend a lot of our time in Circle speaking about our own personal lived experiences. And while we are being graced with the gift of hearing each other's stories, what we do is we practice resonance throughout it. And resonance is really just this cool, embodied embodied empathy practice. And what we know from the field of neuroscience is that there are two types of empathy out there. And I'm sure as the field of research progresses, there will be more nuances and subtleties that will be discovered. But there's really like the cognitive empathy where you can understand someone else. You can be like, oh, that's interesting. Okay. You can kind of get a sense of their story, get a sense of, why they do what they do. And then there is the more embodied empathy where you feel what a person is feeling, where what someone is saying, the emotions, the way that that person is emoting, uh, creates an emotional or bodily response in you that either that just cues that you feel that you recognize that same feeling within yourself, you know, and that's where resonance comes in. That is to resonate, right? Like when there is resonance, it's two instruments uh, uh, having the same frequency at the same time, right? Emitting the same frequency at the same time, right? Um, so what we do in circle is, I call it like the proverbial snaps. You know what I mean? Like when you're like, oh, hell yeah. You know what I mean? Um, so what we do is if and when our own bodies respond, or our own emotions respond to what someone's saying, either like we really feel what they're saying, or we can really relate to what they're saying, anything like that, we signal that to each other by either wiggling our fingers, or putting our hands over our hearts. And oftentimes it really does become a very embodied thing where it's like, you know, or it's like, oh yeah. Or if it's like, oh yeah, it can really be anything. It's really just like allowing your body to respond to what you're hearing in a way that helps the other person know that they're not alone. Know that what they're saying isn't crazy. And the cool thing about practicing resonance in the way that I have seen it, in the way that I facilitate it, is that it really becomes less about the story. It really becomes less about the words that are being spoken, or, like it becomes less about the details, if that makes sense, and more about that emotional resonance. It becomes more about connecting on that human level of being like, oh wow, I really relate to that pain that you're describing there. Maybe you don't relate to the story and the narrative that's around it, the characters that are involved, and the circumstances, right? Maybe you're like, that doesn't make any sense. It's not congruent with the way that I see the world, right? But maybe you can relate to that deeper emotional pain that's really part and parcel to our common humanity, or even insight, right? So this is the opportunity that I see with resonance practice. There are many ways to go about resonance practice. Again, the way that I do it, please come check out Circle so you can see this in practice, experience this in real time. Because what we do is we set up the space in a way where everybody has equal time to share, and we use a community agreement to really take our listening with compassion seriously, and to refrain from crosstalk, refrain from giving unsolicited advice to each other, really set ourselves up just to hold space for one another and to signal when we feel resonance, you know. So why I like this form of resonance is because it keeps us very present. I find that it keeps me very present. I know of other resonance practices where it's about echoing back parts of someone's story that you really resonated with afterwards, which is also a really great way to go about doing it. Um, and then there's also ways where it's about just presencing what's present. It's really about like reflecting back. It's almost even more like an intuitive process of reflecting back the essence of what you heard in someone's story to them. So I can share more about that in another video if that's of interest to people, and point people to both Relational Uprising was the first one that I referenced. They're a really great training program that teaches storytelling and resonance practice as well. And then Otto Scharmer's The Presencing Institute is the second one that I mentioned. Um, and I've experienced some really cool derivations of his work there. Um, so anyways, then I'm like, there's integral theory with the we space and Thomas Hubel's work. There's so much cool work out there. And I look forward to sharing more about that. If that's of interest, let me know, send me a comment or a message. Um, but for me in this day and age, I mean, when, gosh, and even as I just went to say that, there were like 7 different things that flooded into my mind. But it's like there's so many applications and uses for this right now, and so many like deeper needs of why it's worthwhile to explore figuring out how to be empathetic with one another on this more embodied, deeper way, right? How to facilitate deeper listening of one another, whether it has to do with the amount of political division in our country right now, and the fact that, um, yeah, there's just a lot of pain that's present in our country right now. Um, or if it's about really, again, giving birth to new ways of being, and listening and feeling for deeper insights within ourselves, which are really supported by being in a more embodied place. Um, and the list goes on. Again, like 7 popped into my mind at the same time. So let me know what you think about this. Subscribe and follow me below. I am going to be putting out weekly content, and one of the sections of content that I'm going to be putting out is around really, tips and tricks on hosting community space that supports emotional processing for collective wounds. And of course, a lot of these techniques can be applied to other topics as well. But, you know, just things that I've learned in through hosting circles, and through the many different people and schools of thought out there about how to do so. So supporting fellow space holders, um, and yeah, just hoping to connect with individuals who are also doing this cool work, and seeing ways that we can support each other and lift each other up, because this work is very, very important, and it's more needed than ever, I believe. And I think a lot of people would agree. So thank you so much. Also, check out We Heal for All. Check out my circle calendar. I've got drop-ins all the time. I'm going to be doing a circle series, which will be like a month-long 4-circle experience, and I'm looking for that towards April for that. So sign up for my newsletter too. I'll put a link to that below. I'd love to stay in touch, and also send me a message if you're feeling called to. I'd love to be in touch. All right, from my home to yours, I'm sending you so much love and peace and blessings. And thanks for being you and showing up the way that you do.